Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Hello and welcome to our April Book Club episode. This month, I invited you to join me in reading the latest novel from multi-million copy best-selling author Beth O'Leary, and that novel is The Name Game, which is out now and published by Quercus. And if you haven't read it yet, you can grab one via the link in our show notes or from your favourite bookshop. The Name Game tells the story of Charlie Jones, a woman who has landed on the Isle of Orma to embark on her brand new life as the manager of Orma's only farm shop. The only issue is, a man called Charlie Jones has also just arrived on the island to start his new life as the manager of Orma's only farm shop. And so begins a story of beginning again, of grief and healing, of love and hope, and of secrets, lots of them. Author of The Name Game, Beth O'Leary is a Sunday Times bestselling author based in the Hampshire countryside. Her books have been translated into more than 30 languages. Her debut, The Flat Share, sold over 1 million copies and is now a major TV series. Her subsequent novels, The Switch, The Road Trip, The No-Show, The Wake-Up Call and Swept Away were all instant bestsellers. The Road Trip has also been adapted for television and was first aired in 2024. And I, more than anyone, hope after reading The Name Game that this story will be next in the works for an adaptation. And here to dive into The Name Game with me, welcome Beth to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you so much for having me. What an intro. I always feel really flattered and squirmy when people say the nice intro about me.
Does it get easier as a writer now that you've got so many books behind you? Do you think it gets easier to do those interviews and to even be writing those books?
Oh, two separate questions there, I think, because I would say it gets easier to do the interviews to an extent.
Yeah.
As in, to be honest with you, I still get nervous before interviews, but I would say I have a bit more confidence in my ability to talk about my books.
Yeah.
But the writing does not get easier. Every book is a new challenge and every book has a different problem, I would say. And also I think that's partly a problem of my own creation, because I always pick an idea. The things that I'm drawn to writing, they're just things that challenge me. So I end up, with a particularly difficult job to do. So I can't speak to, if I tried to write a straightforward book, maybe I'd have a more straightforward time.
So you've not found the magic formula yet that just makes everything super easy and
No, if only. If someone has that, please.
That's what we're all looking for. Well, I am really excited to be having this chat with you today, Beth, because way back before I did the podcast, I started on Bookstagram and hosting a Zoom book club. And one of the first books that I was speaking about was The Flat Share. So this feels like a really nice...
You've been there since the start.
Yeah, it's such a nice full circle moment. And I remembered when I managed to get you booked in, which I was so excited about. But when I managed to, I was like, oh my God, I've still not watched the adaptation. And I am such a lover of adaptations, which the listeners will know. So I don't know how I've not watched it yet, but that is next on my to-do list. So
amazing.
I've got that to
let me know
what
you think of it.
I will. But before we dive into this book, I do like to start by asking what you're currently reading.
Yes, so I am currently reading a book called In Love with Love by Ella Risbridger. Yeah. So this has been on my radar for a little while and I've been a bit nervous to pick it up. When something is, so the concept, the book, just for anyone who hasn't heard of it, is it's essentially like a guide to romantic fiction or an analysis of romantic fiction. And for starters, I know because my publisher told me that she talks about The Flat Share in there. So I was a little nervous because no one has actually said whether she was nice about it or not.
Okay.
So I think that was part of the reason I was avoiding it. But I am speaking with Ella later this week at an event, and so I was like, I'm gonna read it because I really want to have read it before I meet with her. And it's so good. It's so good, and it's completely what you would hope it would be, which is it is written with such love for romance. And I think part of my wariness was when you really love something and then someone's going to analyze it and pull it apart. And I think I was a little bit nervous that it was going to feel like, Judge, you know how so many people are about romantic fiction. And actually it's just infused with a total respect and love for the genre. And if you are a lover of romantic fiction, it's a really fun, different way to sort of think about the books you love. And
Yeah.
also, absolutely, I've like already, there's about 10 books she's mentioned that I now really want to read.
I've heard this. I've heard that people have come out of reading that book and have just come out with a list and a stack that they've got to now get through. So I feel like that's a good thing in one way, but like a bad thing for your
Yeah,
TBR.
the TBR is already too long.
Oh, I feel you. I wondered, in terms of romance fiction, if you've got any sort of top tier authors that you kind of go to for inspiration, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely maybe the best way to answer is people whose books I know I will always read. You know, like when
Yes.
they've got one coming out. Annabelle Monaghan, whose newest one is Dolly All the Time. I think it's the best of her books. It's coming out later this year. It's just beautiful, and she writes really, I was going to say soft, but like I mean that in a really positive way. Like it's like you feel very held by her books, and they're
Yes.
very loving and sort of gentle. Another writer who has a similar warm feel to her books is Leah Lewis, who I love and will always read. Bolu Babalola, I feel so inspired by, partly because her approach. So Sweet Heat, her last book, is my favorite of hers and one of my favorite romances, probably full stop, certainly from the last few years. And she writes so beautifully, for starters, like so evocatively, but also with a real kind of respect and passion for love. You know, I feel like there's a underlying sort of hopefulness and
Yeah.
I guess just romance to her novels, you know, like a real sense that love matters. And also Carly Fortune, I just will always pick up her next one. Actually, I'm saving Our Perfect Storm because I got a proof, which I feel very lucky about. But I'm saving it for like a holiday or something. It's just sitting on
Yes.
my bedside table looking tempting.
I do this as well. I'm like, I'm going to get to that when it's like a real treat, you know, like if you've got
Yeah,
like a weekend away or like, I don't know, a
exactly.
holiday booked, you're like, that stack is coming with me for that.
Absolutely.
And you just reminded me, I've got Babalula's, oh my God, which one is it?
Is it Honey and
Yes,
Spice?
it is Honey and Spice, yes.
So
I've got that
good.
and I've still not read it, so you've just reminded me I need to get to that. And I was
Definitely do.
really
It's
excited.
really
It's one
brilliant.
of them. I was really excited when I got a copy, and then it's just, unfortunately, newer books have come in and I've
Oh,
let it
it's
get the
so hard.
dust.
I find it really hard when you miss the boat, like when
Yes.
something's coming out. And if you get sent proofs, which is an amazing position to be in, like
Yes.
proofs, for anyone that doesn't know, is a weird word for early copies of books. But I find if I've missed something,
Yes.
then like you've lost the momentum and there's a million things you need to read that are coming out soon that you need
Yeah.
to sort of and so I quite often find that really big books I've just missed because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I didn't read them in time and now everyone's moved on and
Yeah.
I missed the boat.
Yeah, I was really lucky to get a proof of Taffy Brodessa Agner's last book, and I was so
Mm.
excited and missed it, and I felt awful. I was like, how dare I receive this shiny proof?
It's not too
And
late for us. I feel
it's
like
not.
we just have to believe that we can get back to it.
This is so true. But let's dive into your book, The Name Game, which I'm so excited to talk about. And I loved, I can't remember which author you just said this about them making you feel held, because that's how I feel with your books, is that I just feel so held. I loved immersing myself in the world of this novel. It felt, I don't like describing things as cozy because it feels like it belittles things, but I'm not trying to belittle it in any way by saying that. I just feel like I feel safety in that world, and
Oh,
like I can forget the shit show that is the outside
yes.
world.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that because I think possibly with this novel more than any other, I really wanted it to just infuse it with a sense of hope and warmth.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to feel exactly as you've described. So that is so lovely to hear. And I know exactly what you mean about the word cozy. It's become a word that we use to mean, I guess, it's the new fluffy. Everything
Yes,
used to
yeah,
people
that's
used to
it.
say fluffy about the sort of fiction that I write. And now maybe we've started to use cozy in a slightly similar way. Like there's
Mhm.
a slight judgment to it. But I completely agree. I wanted it to be cozy in the exact way that like a gorgeous blanket and a cup of tea
Yes.
and some candlelight is cozy. And you know, why have we started belittling coziness
I
too?
know. Let us have some of that, please. We need it. But the concept of the name game is two people arrive on this small island and they're looking for a fresh start. You know, they're claiming to have been offered the same job. They both have the same name. I wondered what inspired that sort of concept of these two people with the same name, I guess.
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by like name twins, like that person that kind of has the same name as you, and it's so rife for misunderstanding. And so often, like you'll be listening for them now. People have stories of like, you know, getting the email that was meant for the other person of that name. And as a romance writer, I mean, misunderstandings are, you know, they delight me because they lead me in interesting directions. So I had been playing with something along those lines for a while, but it wasn't until I hit on the idea of a gender neutral name like Charlie that I worked out how to make it have a love story at its heart, I suppose, because I was like, oh, hang on, this can actually be my meet cute, you know, this is actually a way into introducing two people and giving them something to fight over, because I liked the idea that they've both, that because of their same names, there's been a mix up that means there's only one thing and there's two Charlie Joneses. And then it was a question of, okay, so what is that one thing? And I thought so hard about this, because whatever it is, it needed to have stakes, you know, like it needed to be something that wasn't just even, you know, I thought hard about an inheritance or something, although unfortunately misunderstandings on that front can actually be quite easily cleared up. My least favorite kind of misunderstanding. No. But that had the stakes. But what I really wanted was something that was more than, oh, like I got something that was meant for them, or they, you know, it needed to be something that felt like we were all really trying to work out which of them got it because it mattered. And so I've always loved those, you know, those jobs that you sometimes see pop up on like the BBC homepage that's like, there's a job to be postmaster of this tiny like Arctic island or whatever. And there's this pull, I think, to something like that I always listen to that pull, because I think it's you know, I write novels that I hope make you feel like you can step out of real life for a while, not entirely, like just far enough that it still matters, you know?
Yes.
And I think that sort of pull towards escapism is a really interesting thing to listen to as a writer of that sort of fiction, because it's a little like the feeling I get when I'm reading a novel like that, where I'm like, oh, maybe I could just start life over as postmaster of, you know. And so I really liked the idea of using something that is not just, oh, they've both got this offered the same job, but like it's a life, because something like that is a complete lifestyle change. It's leaving your world behind. And this book, I mean, I always felt it was going to be about who am I? You know, it's a book about names. And I really liked the idea of playing with how much we can reinvent ourselves, how much we can, you know, who without wanting to sound super philosophical, like who am I? And like how much of that is my past and how much of that is what I want to be and how much can I change that? And so Fresh Starts felt like such a good way to go with it. And then I stumbled across the Isle of Sark in the Channel Islands, which is a similarly sized island to my Isle of Orma and definitely inspired mine, although I had so much fun inventing my island, I have to say. After writing Swept Away, which was the book that I wrote before this one, which was set entirely on one boat, I was so ready to just populate my brain with an entirely new world that I could build myself.
I can imagine. What are the sort of differences and similarities between your island, so the Isle of Orma, and the place that was inspiration for this book?
That's a good question. So, I mean, the geography is I took a few elements of, like, there's oh my gosh, I've forgotten the word for it. Oh, I don't know how to say it. Isthmus? I can write it down.
Isthmus. I don't know.
A narrow stretch of land between two bits of land that is very beautiful on the Isle of Sark, which I kind of used as inspiration for a particular spot in my island. But mostly, I mean, I love making up side characters and sort of quirky, like there's a pub and there's the farm shop where they work, and I generally always prefer with my locations to fictionalize, because to be honest, I find reality very annoying.
I feel you.
Once you start sort of trying to stick to the rules of what actual places are like, you find that they're very inconvenient and things are further apart than you want them to be. And, you know, it's just, I just don't see, you know, I guess like it sort of ruins the fun for me. And as I say, I was very ready, you know, I also think I learned a lot about setting from Swept Away, because that book involves two people alone on a houseboat and they're in the middle of the sea. And so I had so much more restriction on my setting than I'm used to. And it made me realize how often I will just sort of, you know, liven up a scene by bringing them somewhere else, get them moving, get them walking to, you know, change like what the weather is, or all these things that I suddenly didn't have access to. And it meant I was really looking at, I used every inch of that boat. And I also really looked at how the sea and the changeability of the sea could provide that kind of variety in the novel. So I just thought more kind of consciously, I suppose, about setting. And so coming into this book, I think I brought some of that consciousness to setting and kind of had more of a sense of what a tool it can be for exactly what we were talking about earlier, about infusing the novel with a sense of coziness and warmth. And setting is actually a really powerful way to do that. And I felt like I had a lot of fun playing with this book.
Oh, I love that. And it feels like you had a lot of fun. But the population of this place is so small. It's like 500 and then they arrive. And I think you've created such a vibrant, diverse, amazing cast of characters. And I'm not just talking about the Charlie Joneses, which I love, and their friends from before, but I'm talking about the people that live on this island, and they there's this real sense of community, and it's so important to them. But also, word travels fast in a place like that, and nothing is kind of a secret or your own. Could you tell us a bit about sort of creating these side characters? Did you have a favourite? Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
I love side characters because they are much less pressured, I think, in a way than your main characters. I need to know my main characters inside out, and I need to understand all the whys of like why they are the way they are, and I think so hard about them. And then the side characters are almost they're a space to play for me, because I don't need to give you everything.
Yeah.
And often I have very limited space to give you anything, because there are quite a few side characters in this book, because I wanted to give that kind of community feel. And so you don't get a lot of page time with each of them. So you might only have a couple of lines to get to know them. And so it's almost like a sort of challenge of like, how much character can I get across in just half a paragraph? And how much can I make you really feel like you know this person, even though I can't really help you get to know them beyond this? So I think probably my favorite side character is a woman called Galoshes, who
oh my God, she's mine.
She's mine. And she's yay. I'm so glad you liked her too. And what I loved about her is that she's almost like a cliche in a sense, because she's that person when you're coming into a new business who says like, that's not how we do things. And she's sort of almost a character that's been done lots of times before, but I really wanted to make her feel very fresh and new. And like, she is that, but she's so much more than that. And she's actually, got an absolute heart of gold. And her agenda is actually, about protecting something that she thinks matters. So I enjoy, and she's funny. My side characters are such an easy like route to humor as well. And I've often used them in that way. So I think that's the other reason why I enjoy writing them.
Oh, I love that. No, I really loved Galoshes. I feel like there's a big heart underneath.
Totally.
And I wondered, because community is so important to them, and I am finding quite a lot that in a post-COVID world that writers are often exploring community a lot more in their books. And I wondered what it was for you why you think community became such a big theme of this book.
Wow, that's a great question. I think you're possibly right. It might have been because I think Swept Away was in lots of ways a kind of almost a pandemic novel for me, even though I wrote it the bulk of it after the pandemic. But I don't think I would have tackled a book that was about two people alone together until we'd all sort of lived through that kind of period of isolation and loneliness and distance from loved ones and feeling cut off were all things that I was suddenly very interested in writing about. And I think often my books are kind of a reaction to the book before. Like if I lean heavily in one direction, I tend to want to lean the other. And I think possibly I was craving that kind of sense of a big motley collection of people. And I think also I wanted to talk, and write about our capacity to love people who we maybe didn't like at first glance, I think. And one thing that a small community does is it throws people together who might not normally get along and sort of asks you to. And I think that's so lovely. Like in lots of ways, this book is sort of about, we are how worthy of love we all are, for me. So I think it was a chance to kind of a different way into that idea as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I just love that. I really want to ask about your two protagonists. So we have Charlie Jones and Charlie Jones. Can you tell us a bit about sort of creating those characters? And yeah, I'll dive into separately the things that they've been dealing with. But yeah, I'd love to know the sort of starting points for those two characters.
Yeah, so I think because I wanted to write about fresh starts, I chose two characters who I always choose characters who have, difficult pasts and things that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I think that's possibly maybe even more so the case in this book than normal. And I think also, and this was a real challenge in terms of characterization, they both come to the island sort of telling themselves and us that they are a particular person and type of person. And, for instance, Jones is convinced he's an island hermit and he doesn't want to talk to anyone. And he's come to this place to cut himself off from the world.
Yeah.
But what he's actually done is come to live in as we were saying, a very small community and work in the shop, which is like the hub of the community. Yeah. And it's like, on some level, he knew he's actually an incredibly empathetic person. He's a real listener and he really enjoys deep connections with other people. And so he's sort of trying to deny who he is. So it was really interesting to write two characters who you're meeting at the point when they are, and it's written in diaries and emails. So you're getting their account of who they are. And they're both determinedly telling you that they are one type of person, but they're not perhaps being honest with themselves.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting the sort of stories that we tell ourselves, and then you meet somebody and they see straight through that and go, no, that's not who you are.
Yes, and I really wanted them to be that to each other, to that person, because actually, I think if you are, why do they feel like they want to be other than who they are? It's because there are things they don't like about themselves, and what is more sort of powerful than someone seeing through to who you actually are and saying, I like that one, and I really wanted them to do that for each other, especially Jones for Charlie. Like it's really big for her that he sees through kind of who she's pretending to be.
Yes, I really want to be careful about spoilers and stuff, but I just loved their dynamic so much, and I'll be careful.
I'm also being careful. It's a very hard book to talk about on tour, I'll say that.
No, I can imagine. I want to be like, yearning is back, but but I want to ask you a bit more about the kind of issues that they're both dealing with. And I know for your male Charlie Jones, this is quite hard to do, isn't it? Going between the two of them.
I go for talking about male Charlie Jones as Jones and female Charlie Jones as Charlie, if that helps everyone.
That does help. So Jones' reasons, or part of Jones' reason for wanting to start over is to become sober. And I'd love it if you could tell us a bit about writing a character that is trying to get sober and how you kind of wanted to approach the topic of addiction.
Yeah, so for me, I definitely wanted the focus to be on the other side of that, really. So we meet him when he's already made the decision to stop drinking, because I wanted the focus and the novel to still feel really, I wanted the focus to be on hope and kind of rebuilding. And so it was a difficult balance with this book because they both, there's an alcoholism in Jones's story, and then there's Charlie struggling with anxiety. And that was also, it was a big topic for me to tackle. Like, I'm a real warrior. And I think it's interesting to me that it's sort of taken me till this book to actually ever write really about those feelings, at least directly. And actually the first draft of this book, I didn't really get that balance right in terms of, I think, in terms of writing about those serious topics. And it came out there was a lot more detail sort of on their pasts and more focus on what they were dealing with. And I actually found that the novel felt so much stronger when I focused more on the sort of the joy that they were finding on the other side of those things. And that was the novel that I really wanted to write. But I think maybe it helped me to find that novel to write more of the serious issues, really. So I think that first draft was probably necessary. She tells herself, you need to believe that the first draft is necessary, so that I could kind of find what I hope is a really hopeful and joyful balance of, acknowledging how tough what they're both going through is, but also stepping forward into like a really positive future.
Yeah, I think, so much of this book is about like finding hope in dark times, or, trying to, I think fresh starts are such a big thing, and it's really difficult to take that kind of first step. So it is a huge thing that they're
It's
both doing.
it's interesting how appealing fresh starts are as well, isn't it? Like
Yes.
there is something that just lends itself, and particularly in romantic fiction, like something about just leaving the world. Possibly it's that stepping out of reality that
Yeah.
is sort of part of what we're longing for in a story that gives us an ideal love, I suppose. And I always want to strike that balance between giving you that respite and
Yeah.
giving you that sense that you're getting away from reality to somewhere where things are better and
Yeah.
easier. But also, I mean, as we were just saying, like that balance between the serious and the hopeful, also having enough of the hard times in there that, you know, when you get your happy ending, you feel the full depth of it because you know that the characters have been through challenges. And it's a constant balancing act, to be honest, when I'm drafting, working out, you know, how much of this is, am I giving you enough joyous wish fulfillment, fresh starts, new beginnings, island life, you know, the kind of sense that maybe there's a home for all of us somewhere, and we're somewhere where we belong, and but also giving you enough of that kind of groundedness and feet on the earth to make you not feel detached from it, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
completely. And I really want to touch again on, I know we spoke about Jones's issues with dealing with addiction and getting sober, but I really wanted to mention Charlie's struggles with anxiety, and her story really resonated with me. And I really felt like you handled that experience with such thought and care as somebody that has struggled with anxiety for many years. I don't think people realize how sort of debilitating it can be as a condition, because I think it's quite a common emotion that people experience at quite a low level. So to
Yeah.
understand how debilitating it can be is quite hard for people to grasp sometimes.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about, only what you're comfortable with, but could you tell us a bit about what drew you to exploring her struggles?
Yeah, I mean, so I think probably as I say, I knew I wanted them both to have something that they were really challenged by when they
Yeah,
arrived on the island. And why did I choose? I don't know why that came into the novel, if I'm totally honest. I think it felt right for her
yeah,
character that a big part of what was sort of guiding her decisions was this deep fear. And as I say, like, you know, her anxieties are very specifically hers, but it was interesting and I think in some ways healing for me to write about
yeah,
the feeling of being deep in an anxiety. And to be honest, it was hard sometimes,
yeah,
you know, and I think it speaks to how like hard those feelings are to look directly at and
yeah.
how tempting it is to just sort of try to ignore them. And she is doing a very brave thing, I think, in the book where she's sort of facing her anxiety really. And I wanted, again, I don't want to give people the impression that this is like, you know, all kind of very angsty, because I really don't think
No,
it is. And I
it's
think the focus, I wanted it to be on her finding ways that help her. And I actually, sometimes it's funny, one of the characters talks about big sky and looking up at the night sky and seeing the scale of the world as a way of
yes.
helping to remember that your thing that feels so enormous right now for you is actually very small. And I have since writing that found that a really useful sort of way of thinking. So I feel like it probably taught me something too.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think, this novel, I really hope I've not made it come across this way, but this novel, listeners, is absolutely not doom and gloom at all. And
No,
you
you
do.
haven't at all. I was thinking I had.
No, but I just really wanted to focus on that particular topic because it meant so much to me to
Oh,
see that represented on the page. And I think, anxiety is something that can really hold you back. And I think it's so beautiful that she sort of finds that bravery within herself to kind of keep moving forward and to keep trying new things, as scary as they might be,
yeah.
specifically for her. And I think it's the really beautiful thing is that she finds people that actually see her, and that's something that's really special and is really helpful. And it's the really nice thing about her story is that it's not like she needs those people. She's able to find the strength to move forward within herself, but those are just nice extras to have. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I always want my characters rather to go on a sort of journey in themselves. And and not to just sort of find the person who completes them, I suppose. I want them
Yeah.
to be, and actually often my characters will, figure something out for themselves before they're ready to find their person. And then that was almost the sort of the key, because it was a sense of becoming themselves. But also I do think my pairings, I always want them to be making each other better versions of themselves. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Not
Yeah.
or like that each of them is their best and truest self with the other, because I think those are the connections that we make that are just so affirming and kind of effortless. Those the loves in our lives, both friendships and family and romantic loves, where we are properly us. And that was
Yeah.
especially important in this novel.
Yeah, I just loved Charlie so much. I think I saw a lot of myself in her, and I love when that happens in a novel.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
so nice. And I think, she is at this point in her life where she's feeling kind of all consumed by the want to have a baby. I hope I'm allowed to say that. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, I think so. I wondered about whether I can say that too, but it is talked about quite early on in the book, so I think it's not a spoiler.
Yeah, but I think she's reached this point and she's wanted a baby for so long, and it has become all consuming, and that's sort of part of her fresh start for herself. And I feel like I have hit a point in my life where I'm feeling the same. I'm feeling all consumed by that, and it's quite hard for people to understand just how
Yeah.
like all consuming that really is.
Yeah. And she's doing an interesting thing of sort of trying to sort of take the pressure out of her search for love,
Yes.
alongside that, which I just think is such a brave thing to do as well.
Absolutely. It really made me think about how society as we live in it at the moment is sort of set up for, if you want children, you're not supported, and if you have children, you're not supported either. So it just feels like quite a frustrating place to live in. So it was really nice that she sort of finds herself within this community where you think this could actually work.
Yeah.
Because community is, like they say, it takes a village, and
Yeah.
that is, yeah, really
An
important.
interesting thing actually about writing a couple of, they're the oldest characters I've written, except for Eileen in The Switch, who is 79, but in terms of central characters.
Yeah.
And it kind of brought with it a whole host of other interesting things, like, questions around, do I want to have a baby? And, just because they're kind of in their late 30s, mid to late 30s. And also just a different sort of, I think it does slightly change the love story, because it's almost like it's not their first great love,
Yes.
And I think we so often read about people, maybe they've been in love before or whatever, but you get the sense, I think, in most romance novels that this is their big love story.
Yeah.
And I think what was interesting about writing characters who are that age was, well, that's not necessarily the case. And so it was really, and I had so much more past to play with, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's funny as well when when you've reached your sort of mid to late 30s, it's like the practicalities of life. You've got more things, more people relying on you, or you've got, more
Mm.
things to be dealing with, that you don't have the sort of freedom that you maybe had in earlier relationships, where it's like we could just go off and travel the world together, or we could just go off and do something really spontaneous. It's like you're not able to sort of play around anymore. It's like and I think there's something romantic in that as well.
Yeah, that's so true.
I just love Charlie so much, and I could
Oh,
talk about her for ages. But I think I want to ask about the fact that the novel is mostly told through correspondence, whether via
mm.
sort of diary entries or emails. And I wondered if this style was sort of more freeing or restrictive in terms of what you're able to share with readers.
Yeah, it was. I've always wanted to write a novel in a diary style. And I have played with it before. I tried it actually for The No Show, because that novel, my fourth book, it has three female narrators of sort of similar age. And I was really conscious of making sure, like, finding it a way to distinguish clearly between them for the reader. And I thought perhaps voiciness, like one of them being a diary and one of them being something else, might be a way to do that. And actually, in the end, I went for third person, which I think was 100% the right call for that novel. But with this one, what I liked about the kind of diary slash email is that it is them telling you their story, as
Yes.
opposed to me telling you them telling their story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's so hard. I mean, I should probably, there are all sorts of technical terms for all these types of narration, but I kind of feel like it's more helpful to do my way. So I'll explain it that way. But I think that, and also I don't know all the words anymore. I'm sure I didn't want to. I don't anymore. I knew that the characters would be coming to us with this sort of sense of themselves, and that part of the fun of the novel would be digging out sort of, you know, who they really are. So I thought the form would be fun for that too. I will say though, I did slightly miss what I didn't realize it would do is because it's very voicey, you lose a bit of my voice, which I think I kind of probably have in all my books. And it was in particular in moments when I wanted to just give you a little more of maybe a metaphor, or, you know, it would be when I'm describing like a really intense emotion and perhaps they would not on the page, it didn't feel right for them to have like that level of insight into exactly how they were feeling, or it wasn't right for their voice. And I often write, you know, my first person narration tends to have, I like to characterize very strongly in it. So for instance, in The Road Trip, Dylan is very poetic and Addie is a very pragmatic, straightforward person. And you will see a lot more description and a lot more metaphor and a different way of looking at the world in Dylan's chapters versus Addie's. But it was amplified by the format here. And there are actually some third person sections in this novel. And I really enjoyed writing those because it was like a little, for me, a little breath where I could like almost just like step in a little bit more in terms of my style rather than just Charlie's style and Jones's style.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so interesting as well that you were saying about, you know, trying to, it's hard to sort of keep your voice in there when you're, you know, writing their voice. I'm not making sense of what I'm trying to say.
It's actually extremely hard to talk about.
It is.
Not helped by the plot.
But I mean, it's such a great story. If I've not made this apparent, listeners, I love this so much, this book. And it's really difficult to talk about this book because I don't want to give any spoilers. And I think what I will say, Beth, is that you just blew my mind.
Did I? Yes. Do you know what? With some of my books, I think they are best gone into with absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
That there will be any surprises. But I do think with the name game, I'm sort of telling you from the get-go, like, yes, I'm giving you a mystery as well as a love story.
Something's going on here.
you know, because you're trying to work it out with me and with the characters as the story goes on, kind of what's going on. So it's nice because at least we can say that there might be a surprise in there. Whereas I feel like with some of my other books, if anyone who's listening has read all of them, you might know which one in particular I'm talking about. That one of my books is just genuinely read best, just expecting nothing in terms of twists or surprises. And that was the hardest book to promote because I felt like I couldn't even say that there was anything to look out for. So I was just constantly trying not to ruin my own book for everyone. So at least with this one, I can say, you know, I really enjoyed thinking of a really good sort of way to take the story, because actually, you know, the idea of these two Charlie Joneses, there were so many ways that there were so many reasons I could give you for why. So it was really a case of which one do I like the best?
Oh my God, no. I remember I was sat on the sofa this weekend reading it and I was like, oh my God. And it was like, have you seen the meme of the woman that's just got all the equations going around her head? That's
many people have sent me that meme in the last few days.
That's how I felt.
Somebody said when they finished it, they were like, your brain needs to be studied. I was
it
like,
does.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
I was like, I don't know how you've like pulled this off. I don't know how like you've managed to keep up with everything that's going on here.
What I like to do if I'm doing a twist or a surprise or anything like that in a novel, you know, revealing something maybe that wasn't how you expected, I always want it to have an emotional purpose in the novel.
Yes.
Like I don't want it to just be there as a sort of flourish, even though that would be fun too. But what I want it to do is point to maybe a way of sort of overturning what we thought that makes us then see love differently, or see how we view relationships differently, or challenge our kind of make us question why we were so sure it was one way when it was the other, and just really add to our emotional experience of the love story. So I always ask myself when I'm trying to do something fancy, if I am like, the reader comes first for me, like as in the reader's experience of the book, because as a reader, that is what I care about. I would so much rather a book moved me than kind of was clever, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to feel. That's what I'm looking for. So I want to make sure that so for instance, with this book, I was determined to call them both Charlie Jones throughout, and for the voice to be strong enough that you would always know whose chapter you were in without me using different names for them. And then I just thought, is that adding to anything except amusing me? You know, and I was like, I'm going to call her Charlie and him Jones. And you know what?
Yeah.
That does not detract from the kind of interest of the setup or the emotional experience of reading the book. So it's kind of just asking myself, like, am I trying to be too clever, or am I doing something that is really adding to the reader's joy when they read this book?
Yeah, I mean, I think their voices are definitely strong enough that you know who
But it
you're
would have
with.
just been one more thing for you to think about, and there's already a fair bit to think about.
No, that's so fair. I mean, you've just did you say you've just finished your tour?
Oh no, I am midway,
No,
although
you're
I
midway
finished
through.
I did a huge, well, it didn't, wasn't actually huge. It felt huge run of some cities in sort of, we kind of based ourselves in Leeds and kind of went outwards from there. So
Okay.
it's been a kind of whirlwind week. I feel like I've been all over the place. And I was in Waterstones, Newcastle, and somebody said to me, "How are you finding Newcastle?" And I was like, "I've literally just walked here from the train station. I'm sorry.
No.
I wish I'd got to see more of it, but it does mean I get to meet lots of readers. So
Yeah,
worth
it's
rushing around."
always a plus side. I wondered if anybody had let anything slip on tour yet, if anybody had asked anything.
So my lovely interviewer in Newcastle, she did warn me that she was like, she said on stage, she was like, "I'm really bad for spoilers. I have ruined this book for 3 people so far today." And I was like, "Oh no," but she did so well. She held it together and didn't spoil anything.
I think I'm at an advantage that, you know, we're recording this and I can edit as I please because I was like, any time that I slip up, you can just be like, "Hannah, no, abort mission." Whereas when you're doing it live, it's
I think you've done very well. Have I said anything?
yeah, no, I think you've done perfectly. You can tell that you've practiced
Yeah,
talking about this book.
navigating the
Yeah,
plot. Yeah, the first time you talk about a book where there's something that you don't want to tell readers until they've read it, it is always a little nerve-wracking, and I do
yeah.
sometimes give myself a moment to pause before I say a sentence, just like scan it for spoilers. Nope, it's
Yeah.
okay, I'm not going to spoil the book.
I love that. But listeners, I really hope that you've enjoyed this wonderful conversation with Beth. And I really hope if you've read The Name Game that you loved it too. Please come and let us know your thoughts. And if you haven't read it yet, what are you waiting for? Go grab yourselves a copy. As I said earlier, you can get yourselves a copy via the link in the show notes or from your favourite bookshop. But before I let you go, Beth, I do want to finish by asking what you'd like to recommend to the listeners.
My book that I am absolutely going on about the whole time at the moment is a book by Maureen Gu called One and Only,
Oh, I've not heard
which,
of this.
yes, I think it might not be out in the UK just yet, but it's out very shortly. And it's about a matchmaking company where they can see into your past lives for the person that is your one, basically, in all of the lives you've lived before. And it's what the main character works for this. She's one of the people that can do this, and she has known for the last 15 years the name of her one, basically the man she belongs with, and she's going to find, but she can't track him down. And so she knows that he will turn up eventually, like that's how it goes. And so she's been sort of dating. She's 40, which I also loved because it's like not a thing, like
Yeah.
she just is, and she's very confident and assured, and it's not sort of part of the novel. She just is, which I loved. And she's hoping to find this guy, but in the meantime she has like an amazing weekend, in fact, with this gorgeous guy, and then he introduces her to his boss, and his boss is called Daniel Nam, which is the name of the man that she's been looking for. So it's a beautifully original love story, but also just asks, all sorts of interesting questions about fate and romance and whether there is one person for everyone and all those sorts of questions that I find totally fascinating. So I would really recommend that one if you're looking for another great read.
Oh my God, that sounds so much fun.
I
I need to
know.
get
It's
my
such a
hands on
good
that.
concept, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I definitely will be adding that to my TBR. Thank you, Beth. My pile is ever growing.
Sorry.
And you've given loads of great recommendations this episode, so thank you so much. Where can the listeners find you on socials, if anywhere?
Oh yes, I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Beth O'Leary author. I am also on TikTok, and I will be back there when I have been rubbish, but in theory I am there.
You're there. You're there. You've been a bit busy, I think.
I have. I find if I don't stick at it and I get out the habit, it feels
It's
like you have
so
to
hard.
rejoin the party, especially with TikTok, where it's like it's all trends, and I've missed
Yeah.
them all.
I feel you. I feel you. But Beth, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for being our April Book Club pick.
No, thank you so much for choosing the name game. I am honoured, and I hope everyone's going to love it.
I'm sure they will. I loved it so much. And listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on X and TikTok. That is all we've got time for. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again, Beth, and goodbye.
Thank you so much.